This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
A New Age teaching that's very much like sorcery is worming its way into Christian churches. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. That'll be the subject of our discussion today. Please take a moment if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. At Gilbert House is our address. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and then make sure we never get canceled, at least from you, because we have a free app that will guarantee that we're never canceled. We will not get canceled from our app. You'll find it at the website, VFTB.net. Look in the top menu bar for the link to the free app, or go to gilberthouse.org/app. It's available for iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets. Not only does it have all of our content there, it's got a Bible, multiple translations, an audio Bible, in fact, calendar of our upcoming events and Bible studies, and much more. All of that on the website at gilberthouse.org. Links to all of those app stores to make sure it's the right app for your device. Now, joining us on the program for the first time is a young man that we met a couple of months ago when he was out here in the Ozarks to serve as a guest on Skywatch TV's main program. I was honored to be on the panel that day. He's got a book that we highly recommend, and that's the reason he was invited. He's so impressed the management, Skywatch TV, Donna Howell and Joe Horn, that they invited him in. The book is called Law of Attraction, A Gateway Drug to Spiritual Heroin, which is a good way of describing it. So we welcome to the program for the first time, John Clash. John, welcome to the program. We had an opportunity to meet recently when you visited Skywatch TV. They just ran a series of several weeks based on your book. For those who didn't see the programs or may not be familiar with the Law of Attraction, what is it?
Yeah, so you can break it all down to this statement that you'll hear a lot called, stated like, thoughts become things, right? And that kind of, that underlies what they believe. So to expand on that, they believe that like attracts like, meaning your thoughts have actual frequencies, and those frequencies go out into the universe and they attract whatever your predominant thoughts are, right? So just to have a very understandable example, right? If I want this microphone and I want it really bad, I just picture the microphone in my mind and I just hold on to that thought. And by doing so, it enables me to be on the frequency of that microphone. Eventually, the microphone will manifest itself into my physical reality because the universe gives you whatever it is you're predominantly thinking about. Because the thought, again, it's like they use it in the movie The Secret, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but how your thoughts are like a television transmitter, right? And goes out, brings back whatever it is you're thinking of. So that's essentially what it is in a nutshell. It's a very simplified explanation. And I'm sure that if somebody who believes in the law of attraction was listening, they'd be like, no, that's not exactly it, because they obviously expand on it a little more. But at its core, that's what they think.
The Secret was kind of a big deal. Was it maybe 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
What is that? How influential has that movie been in spreading this idea that we can essentially manifest the reality that we want with our thoughts?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that the wave of secret frenzy that went on years ago is essentially over in the mainstream. But if you just go on Amazon right now, it's still, I believe, in the top 100 or top 1,000 books being sold, right? And there's millions of books being sold. So for it to be in that area, that's a testament to how relevant it still is, right? And it's just, so that kind of brought it all to the mainstream. Rhonda Byrne, who was the author and producer of The Secret, she was on Oprah, and this is part of Oprah's spirituality, and then you have the Eckhart Tolle and all of them branching off from it. But yeah, essentially that's what catapulted it. Before them you had Esther Hicks and all of that, and then before TV you got Phineas Quimby with the New Thought movement. But yeah, The Secret is still today, I mean, it's on Netflix, so it's still very relevant, even though it's outdated, it's still very relevant.
How related is this to the film from 20 years ago now? What the bleep do we know?
Yeah, so they use some of the same principles. That's the what the bleep was more focused on the quantum physics side of it, which The Secret touches on a little bit, and what the bleep goes in depth on that stuff. Obviously they take a very minority view when it comes to quantum physics. Most quantum physicists disagree with their interpretation of quantum theory, and it's really considered pseudoscience, the way that many of the handpicked quantum physicists portray it. I just had somebody reach out to me. They commented under a video that I did about how the universe had a beginning, and they were telling me, "Oh no, you have to look into this guy Nassim something." And I'm like, he's like, if you've ever studied quantum physics, you'll know about this guy. So I went and I looked him up, and then I find out he never studied at a credible university. He doesn't have a degree in physics. So this is what happens. They pick these guys who know more than the average person about quantum physics. And I would say, in my limited understanding of quantum physics, I would technically know more about quantum physics than most people out there. And that's not to say that most people out there are stupid. It's just who in everyday life discusses quantum physics? Nobody, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not something that your regular, average, everyday layperson would understand. And it's also not something that, if you're looking into quantum physics, that you'll necessarily understand, right? This is some really complicated stuff. So they use that in what I call as smoke bombs. They got these handpicked quantum physicists that throw smoke bombs at you and me using big scientific words, saying, citing double slit experiment and the observer effect, and how this proves that your thoughts actually create your physical reality. Not in the way of like your thoughts influence your emotions influence your actions influence your results in life. That's not what they mean. They mean literally your thoughts are creating your reality. You don't have to go through all of those other steps. It just think of it, boom, should be there, right? So they'll also give you all these reasons of why you aren't manifesting fast enough, and we can get into that later. But yeah, to answer your question, what the bleep is just expanded on. It's just an expansion of the discussion of quantum physics under the law of attraction. I guess you could call it philosophy.
We see the same kind of thing in discussion of, say, the ancient Mesopotamian deities, the Anunnaki. You get somebody who comes along and says, well, the ancient Sumerians thought that these entities had come here as gods, but actually they were just spacemen, and here's what the Sumerian says. And for most of us who don't read or study Sumerian, it sounds plausible, and that's how you get a bunch of people who think Zechariah Sitchin was really onto something.
Yeah, but didn't he add all of the other stuff later on? If you dig into the Sumerian text as they are, essentially, right? They really have nothing to do. They have a little bit to do with the story that he tells, but he added a lot of stuff to it, like the planet Nibiru and all of that stuff.
No, absolutely. Our friend, the late Dr. Michael Heiser, who actually could read Sumerian, put up a whole website titled, SitchinIsWrong.com, and showed exactly where in the Sumerian Sitchin was mistaken. He issued a public challenge through Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM years ago that the Sitchin and then his followers never took Mike up on. But
I hope that somebody is maintaining that that website.
Yes, it is still available out there, and it does explain a lot of just the basics. Look, either Zechariah Sitchin, God rest his soul, either could read Sumerian and was making stuff up, or he couldn't read Sumerian at all and was just making stuff up. But the bottom line is there is no planet Nibiru. That's just an alternate transliteration of the city named Nippur, which was where the chief god of Mesopotamia, Enlil, had his temple. And interestingly enough, and this is really ironic, because the vision that Ezekiel had with the wheels within wheels that Giorgio Tsoukalos points to as example of UFO in the Bible, that actually took place over the Kivar Canal. And the reason Ezekiel mentions the Kivar Canal and the vision I had at the Kivar Canal like 8 times in his book is because that canal ran right through the city of Nippur. In other words, God manifested his throne room right above the temple of the chief god of Mesopotamia. So, God has a sense of humor.
He definitely He definitely does have a sense of humor.
Well, how does that manifest in your life? I mean, I know that there are days when I feel like, Lord, why are you having this old radio disc jockey writing books on theology? How have you seen the hand of God at work and in your life, and how often does it make you laugh?
So I will tell you, one of the ways, and this is something that that you'll resonate with because you work with the people at Skywatch TV, right? So I was in discussion with Skywatch TV, well, not Skywatch, but Defender for possibly publishing the book, right? And this was, 3 months of discussing, and then it eventually didn't work out. And through the 3 months, I'm like, I'm just in this limbo, and it's nothing like I'm not blaming them or saying, oh man, they kept me in limbo. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want anyone to take this out of context. But for that 3 months, I'm like, all right, well, what do I do? What do I do? But they gave me some advice after reading my book that I truly feel took my book from a good book to a great book. And I'm not trying to sound conceited when I say that, but I really do feel that their advice took it to another level, right? And as I'm going through this process, I'm like losing my mind a little bit because I'm the type of person of when I want to go, I want to go. Right. I got to get something done. So I'm having these discussions with my wife of what are we going to do here? I got to wait. Should I just move on this? Should I this? Should I that? And then after everything, we obviously didn't release the book with Defender. They just had way too much stuff going on. But after it was handed back to me, and after I went through the whole entire process and all of that stress that I was going through, I looked at the completed version of the book and I just couldn't help but laugh because I wanted the book to be out like last year. You know what I mean? But through that process of me stressing out, I found out more information that I wanted to put in the book. I had Skywatch, Defender, take it to a whole nother level just by the advice that they gave me. And as like the book came together in the form that it is now, like the cover and everything, I'm just so happy with it that I look back and I'm like, through these processes, we were having these conversations with God, and sometimes you don't get an immediate response. You know what I mean? It's like God nudges you in one direction, and then you're kind of just moving in that direction. Like, hey, so when you gonna, give me another nudge or tell me to stop moving? And so when it all came together, I just thought it was so funny that I was stressing over this stuff, and I kind of look up at God. Like, all right, I see what you did there, and so that's how I feel that he has a sense of humor. And that's just one of millions of ways that I think he has a sense of humor. And I think that's also why we should have a sense of humor about things. Yeah.
Sometimes his answer is not yet. It's neither yes nor no. It's just not yet because there's something that we need to learn in the meanwhile. Well, what brought the law of attention to the law of attraction to your attention, and how did your perception of it change over time?
Yeah. So it got my attention through business, right? Whenever you're in sales or marketing or something, people are always looking to keep people motivated.
Yep.
And so the secret, the law of attraction, that's something that people just use, right? Because it sounds good, it tickles the ears, and it's a way to get people focusing on the positive and not the negative. Sales is tough, right? It just is. So you need to focus on the positive over the negative.
Right.
And so I was first introduced to it by a friend, completely had nothing to do with sales. It was just my friend introduced it to me like, hey, I found it. We're going to be rich, blah, blah, blah. And then they showed me a DVD of The Secret, and I forgot about it the next day. But then it came back around when I was in business, and I'm like, why is my business flatlining? I'm doing all these things that I'm supposed to do. What's up? And so I reach out to some people who are more successful, and they're like, John, you gotta watch The Secret, the law of attraction, bro. And I was like, oh, I can't believe I forgot about that. So that kind of what got me onto it, right? And really diving into it, because here at that time, I'm just chasing success. I'm chasing worldly success, money. Like that was my ambition, was to, I was just tired of being broke. And so I was just pushing and pushing and pushing. And then I'm looking for anything that can help me along the journey. This is partly why I was involved in Santeria as well. I looked at that as like a good luck charm, right? And that's a whole other rabbit hole that that we can go down, maybe another episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so long story short, I become a Christian while I'm still doing all of this this law of attraction stuff. I'm thinking the law of attraction is science because, as we discussed earlier, that's what they paint it as. They paint it as this is just science, is, nothing spiritual. This is how things work. People in the past knew how this worked. And they make this appeal to authority that most of us just, we conform to authority a lot more than we submit to authority a lot more than we like to admit. We do it. The only authority that we don't want to submit to is God for some reason, but everyone else, will submit.
He's got a white lab coat. He must be right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Paid actor. It says it at the bottom, but so I'm doing this whole law of attraction thing while I'm now a Christian, and I can look back at it now, and I know it was the Holy Spirit that was convicting me and pulling me out of it and stopping me from participating in not only the Santeria, but this New Age practice when I didn't even know that I was practicing New Age spirituality, right? So I'm pretty sure, right, the reason why I started looking into the law of attraction and trying to figure it out was just simply because it wasn't working anymore. It's not working. And anytime that I ask somebody why it's not working, they always give me some unfalsifiable claim. It's because, you have a blockage, or, because, you're not maintaining on the frequency. Oh, you got to meditate. Oh, you got to listen to this audio. It's always something that I'm doing wrong. It's not the law of attraction that's not working. It's me that's not working. Right. So I'm eventually fed up, and I don't know when it happened, but I decided to start looking into the origins of it. And when I started looking into the origins, I was like, what are we talking about? Helena Blavatsky? What is this? Who is this lady? And I'm looking at the underlying spirituality that's under all of it, and I'm just blown away. I'm thinking it's science, and then I dig and it's spirituality. And I was just at that point, I started realizing this is not something that I can be doing. Also, you have to remember that when I first became a Christian, I didn't know how to read the Bible in context. I didn't know how each Bible, how each book of the Bible is for a different reason, for written to a different people at a different time period. I thought the whole entire thing, you just could pick whatever you want and apply it to your life. Jeremiah 29:11. That's how I thought. So when I first got involved, when I first became a Christian, I was still listening to prosperity preachers and motivational Christian speeches. So I'm trying to make law of attraction fit Christianity. And then when I'm realizing that I have pretty much both things wrong, I'm realizing you cannot do both, right? This is not something that we should be participating in, because not only does New Age and New Thought promote the law of attraction, but they also promote a whole bunch of other things that are just obviously not in alignment with Christianity. So that's when I started telling people about it. And it was years of me trying to tell people that this is wrong. And then that's why I finally wrote the book. My wife was like, John, maybe you should just write a book about it. So, yeah.
How is quantum physics misapplied or misused to draw people in and convince them, like you were convinced, that this is just science?
Yeah, well, it's just smoke bombs, right? There's a quote that I have in my book from I'm gonna mess up his name, so I'm not even gonna say it, right? But he was quoting a colleague, and he said that if you ever hear the word quantum come out of somebody's mouth who's not a physicist, you can almost be guaranteed that you're gonna have a huge quantum of BS dropped on your head, right? And it's because, as we were discussing earlier, we don't understand quantum physics. And there's dozens of interpretations of quantum physics and quantum theory. And through those interpretations, there's even more interpretations trying to interpret those interpretations, right? So my biggest issue with the law of attraction and quantum physics, being one, is that I have a hard time believing that Joe Dispenza, Rhonda Byrne, John Hagelin, and these guys, these New Age pseudo-scientific people, they're the ones that have the actual undeniable, one true interpretation of quantum physics, and all the other quantum theories are inaccurate. I just have a really, really difficult time believing that. And so does the rest of academia. You know, they look at these views as the minority view. And so you can go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole trying to figure out quantum physics. But unless you even have just a basic understanding of physics 101, how are you going to even grasp quantum physics? Because here's the other thing too. They'll say that the law of attraction is a natural law in the way that gravity is a natural law. But if you're going to appeal to quantum physics, the whole reason you're appealing to quantum physics is because quantum physics is way different than regular Newtonian physics, right? Like it's just, they're two completely different things.
Right.
So appealing to one cancels out the other, but you're trying to appeal to them both and put it under the umbrella of science. Hey, science proves the law of attraction. And it's like, what do you even mean by science? What branch of science are we talking about here? So I know I'm saying a lot, but that's because there's a lot to be said. It's just a complete mess. And when you put all their claims next to each other, right? You put all their scientific claims next to each other, each one contradicts the other. And you could have a whole entire paragraph. I have in my book, right before I go through the paragraph, it says, takes deep breath. And like, I just list out all of the claims all the scientific claims that they make, and I pin them next to each other, and I show how they all contradict each other. They sound good when they're separate, but together they're one big contradiction. And so could they have the one undeniable true interpretation of quantum physics? Yeah, they could, but highly unlikely.
And pigs could also fly.
Yeah, definitely.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
There are some experiments though that they will point to, like ice crystals. The double slit experiment, but also, like the formation of ice crystals. If you're a glass of water that's freezing and you say nice, pleasing words to it, the crystals look all nice and well ordered and like, ideal.
Yeah,
and
those are not peer reviewed. I forget the name. It was a Japanese scientist who started saying that, and it was in one of these scientific journals that the majority of scientists actually have a problem with. But
in other words, you pay your fee and they publish your paper?
Yeah. It's like how social media influencers now pay to be on Fox, right? So they, if you look into that, they even have a book. I think it's called like the Metaphysics of Water or something like that. But it's just not peer reviewed, right? And to have something be a scientific fact and not be willing to peer review it, to claim that it's a scientific fact, and you just don't have it peer reviewed, and then you don't go and repeat the experiment over and over and over again. That's how we know gravity is real, because it's an experiment you can do over and over and over. You can test it through the scientific method over and over and over again, and every single time that you do it, the results are the same. So there's too much variability, I believe, and that's why he never had it peer reviewed and never continued. Right now, I'm sure that somebody listening can go pull up a paper or pull up a source or pull up this or pull up that. I always tell people, research the research. Just because somebody has doctor in front of their name doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about. And just because somebody doesn't have doctor in front of their name doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. But when it comes to physics, quantum physics especially, without committing the appeal to authority fallacy, in these type of situations, we're going to kind of have to a little bit, because we just don't have, you and I as lay people in the scientific field, we just don't have enough information. There's enough information, but we don't have the skills to be able to interpret that information, because that skill and those skills are something that you develop over a very long period of time, going through rigorous studies in schools, not just schools, because some of these people are graduating from metaphysical school of this or metaphysical school of that, so they can say that they have went through schooling. But I'm talking about credible schools where you could have accredited college credits by taking this course, so we have to kind of appeal to authority in that way. But
yeah,
we're always appealing to authority in one way or another.
True, but what's really telling about this lack of peer review on those types of studies is that even peer review is not a guarantor that the study is correct. Science is wrestling with something right now that's been increasingly obvious over the last 20 years, going back to about 2005, a paper published called Why Most Published Research Findings Are False. It's called the replication crisis. So even when studies are submitted for peer review and approved and published in a respected academic journal, it doesn't necessarily mean that that study is actually true, because they're finding that, especially in certain sciences, the so-called soft sciences, that the majority of studies cannot be replicated. So if you're not even willing to submit it to a peer review process in which you're likely to get it approved, even if it's not really true, that really says something about the lack of verifiable information or data as part of your study. Why should
it was? I'm sorry, but if it was submitted for peer review, I don't have that information. I have not seen that it has been.
And again, my point is that even if it is, critical thinking needs to be applied, because it doesn't necessarily mean that is a seal of approval. Why should we as Christians care about this? I mean, I think looking in from the outside as somebody who, and I grant that other people come to Jesus Christ in different ways than I did. I guess I inherited that bit of my dad's engineer mentality. Show me how all of these pieces fit together before I really understood that, okay, the gospel is real. Jesus Christ really did die and rise again from the dead, and it was witnessed by multiple, like hundreds of witnesses, according to the Apostle Paul, and that his half-brother James, who was in a position to know differently, died rather than recant his testimony 30 years later. Like, oh, okay, suddenly like the whole wall just gave in, and there was a new reality for me. Sharon, when she was like 3 years old, she just knew God was real. This is all real. I just know that I know. And there are people who will come to the Lord through miraculous visitation or dream or whatever, a miracle that takes place in their lives. For me, it was just, show me the evidence. And ... Looking at it from my perspective, I can see that this kind of a claim that you can manifest the reality you want, I'm sorry, I've never seen that to be true in my life. I prayed harder than I've ever prayed in my life when my father got very ill back in 2005, and the Lord called him home anyway. My first marriage broke up, and I prayed as hard as I could. I was thinking of good thoughts, and it just didn't work out. We all know good people to whom bad things have happened. So how is it that this is influencing the Christian church? Why should we care?
Well, the number one reason why we should care is because it leads people away from Christ. That's the biggest reason why we need to care, because the law of attraction is just the doorway. I call it a gateway drug to spiritual heroin. That's the subtitle of the book. The reason being is because it just opens the door. I compare it to Eve taking the one bite out of the forbidden fruit, and then passed it to Adam. So it's the law of attraction is the one bite into the forbidden fruit that opens this floodgate of spiritual consequences, because it's only a matter of time that you start seeking for ways where you can make the law of attraction work when it's not working. And none of the answers that you're going to find from the people who practice the law of attraction, none of the answers you're going to find is, hey, you should just dig into the Bible and get closer to Jesus. That's never the answer. The answer is always, well, you might have something, you might have a spiritual blockage, so you got to take a Reiki session. You might need to start listening to these guided meditations. Oh, you're not meditating? What's wrong with you? Well, that's why the law of attraction is not working. Oh, you've never done yoga? Oh, you got to start doing yoga. Yoga will help you with the law of attraction. You got to align your chakras. You don't know about chakras? Oh, man, this is more ancient than Christianity. So that means that it's true, right? If it comes before, that means that it's true. So it leads you down this path of stepping away from Christ. Now, many people, what I've witnessed is they get stuck in this one area of the law of attraction life, which is just a new meditation, a new a new yoga class, or a new audio book, or book to read, The Untethered Soul. They get stuck in like that for a very long time, and they'll still be going to church. They'll still be telling people about Jesus. That it's just that they're participating in things they shouldn't be participating in as Christians, right? Drinking from the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons all at the same time without even realizing it. So right there, even though I think that's a bad place for people to be, it's not the worst place for somebody to be. The issue is when you now go a step further and you're seeking beyond just, man, how do I make the law of attraction work? Now you start seeking enlightenment. You start seeking spiritual breakthrough, and you go down to the path of taking spiritual warrior retreats and sweat lodge and kundalini yoga and intense transcendental meditation and taking psychedelics, spending thousands of dollars to go to Peru to do ayahuasca. This is the path that it leads you down, because you're just seeking and seeking and seeking for that final breakthrough, for enlightenment, you could call it. You're just seeking that out so diligently instead of just seeking Christ. It's so much easier to seek Christ. So much easier. It may not be as socially acceptable, but I tell you, as much backlash I get for being pro-life and being a vocal Christian and all that stuff, it's way easier than me chasing that high, that spiritual high, spending thousands and thousands of dollars just chasing it. Jesus doesn't want anything from you except your love and trust. That's it. He just wants your love and trust. Yes, does he want you to give money to the church? Yeah, but it's not a requirement to be in relationship with him. For this spiritual path, this spiritual heroin path, there's all these requirements that you have to meet in order to attain enlightenment. And there's all of these practices that you have to do in order to get there. It's a lot of work. So it just, you start seeking the enlightenment instead of seeking the enlightened one, who is Jesus Christ. He knows everything that there is to know. He created this universe that you and I are living in, and these people are seeking enlightenment from. They're seeking enlightenment from what he created. And it's so much easier to just focus on Christ and follow him. Is the walk easy all the time? No, but it is way easier and way less draining than heading down the spiritual heroin path.
But how are Christians being drawn into this? I mean, we're looking at like Mark 11, beginning of verse 23, where Jesus says, "Therefore, truly I tell you that if anyone says to this mountain, be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and has no doubt in his heart, but believes that it will happen, it will be done for him. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Are verses like this used to say, hey, this is how this works? I mean, Jesus said you can have whatever you want. So
yeah, of course they have a twisted scripture, I like to call it. These LOA, law of attraction scriptures that they pull, that being one of them. And they also use John 10:10 that shows that they'll say, see, Jesus came that you may have life more abundantly, because abundance is that's a buzzword in the New Age and New Thought movement. But so the way that Christians are getting caught into it, see, from my experience as a Christian, I was already in it, bringing it into my Christianity. So one of the ways that it can get other Christians involved is when you have somebody like me who brought it into their Christianity, and now I'm trying to influence this on other Christians around me. And most Christians don't read their Bible. They don't know that they don't know God's actual nature. They don't even know what monotheism is in comparison to pantheism. Mm-hmm. They don't know these things. So it's easy for people to start believing something when they have no foundation. So that's one way. And then the other way is just you have preachers that are practicing the law of attraction and preaching it and mixing it with Christianity. I was talking to one of my friends. He's a Reformed Calvinist, and he has this friend who's a pastor of his, not a pastor of his, but who is a pastor who is believing the law of attraction and is arguing with my friend about why he should be able to do this. And now he's practicing yoga as a pastor, right? So if a pastor can get caught up in it, the everyday churchgoer can get caught up in it. And then you have the word of faith movement and prosperity gospel. And when you dig into when you dig into many of the word of faith theological positions, right? And then you also dig into the history of the word of faith movement. It's influenced by the New Thought movement, right? E.W. Kenyon went to Emerson College at a time when New Thought philosophy was running rampant through it, right? And he's considered one of the founders of the Word of Faith movement, right? So this theology that teaches before Adam and Eve fell, they had the ability to speak things into existence, and when they fell, they lost that ability. But Jesus not only came back to die for our sins, but also when we put our faith in him, we now have that ability to, again, we have the ability to now speak things into existence. They also believe that faith is a force, right? So when you have enough faith in something, you're activating the faith force, and that faith force activates God's blessings in your life, and those blessings equaling money, wealth, health, material, material things of this world, right? So it's really just the law of attraction with sprinkles of Jesus on it, of a false Jesus, obviously. But so there's many ways that it can happen. But I think the number one way is people being ignorant to it, not knowing what the law of attraction is, not knowing the language of people who believe in the law of attraction and talk to other people about the law of attraction, because they may not say law of attraction. They may say manifest, right? Or they may say speak it into existence, name it and claim it. They might use these other terms, which is why you have to be up on the terms. You have to know about this stuff so you can spot it. That's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, was so that way, yes, I wanted to help people get out of it, but I also wanted people who are out of it, who are Christians, and I even want people who aren't Christians to be able to talk to people about why they shouldn't believe in the law of attraction. But in order to do that, you have to know how they think. You have to know how they talk. And you have to know something about what they believe, so that way you can relate to them, and you're not just slapping them with the Bible like, that's demonic, Yeah. You have to know.
After a career in sales myself, and I'm sure you would agree with this, most people don't respond well to being told you're stupid and everything you know is wrong. Not a good opening line. I don't
respond well to that.
Yeah, not a good opening. How can you buy your steel from these guys? They're idiots. That never worked for me. I had to learn a different approach. How does this affect the faith of somebody who comes into a church and is drawn into this word of faith, or name it and claim it, whatever, prosperity gospel, and things still go wrong in their lives? Marriage falls apart, lose a job, bankruptcy, foreclosure, whatever. How does that affect somebody's faith?
So one of the ways it affects them is, since they have this false idea of who God is, they look at him now as a faith force, or that if they do X, they get Y, right? And then they also look at him like a genie in the bottle. That imagine being taught God wants you healthy, wealthy, abundant, financially. He wants you all of these things, and then you're not those things. And no matter what you do, it just seems like you're not ever going to be those things. And then at the same time, the pastor is asking you for more and more money, and telling you that if you sow a seed, you're going to reap the reward of that seed 10 times, 100 times over. And then imagine doing that over and over and over again, and not seeing your seed sprout. It's sprouting for your pastor, but it's not coming back, because the pastor is now the carrot at the end of the stick. The gurus are the carrot at the end of the stick in New Age and New Thought, when they're selling you their courses and all of that stuff. But a word of faith or prosperity preacher is like a Creflo Dollar, right? Like that guy is a carrot at the end of a stick. You see him with his private jet. You see him living lavishly. You see him all of this stuff. And he's telling you that's because of faith. It's because of God wants to bless you. And then you're not getting blessed. It's only a matter of time, unless you are just like totally bought into this cult. If it's only a matter of time before you start questioning Uh, one, if God really loves you, right? And then two, if God actually exists, because it's one or the other. If you have this false idea of God, right? This false God definitely don't love you, because the false God definitely don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives people this false expectation. And then one of two things happen. Either they completely walk away from God and spirituality altogether, or they now start looking at alternative forms of spirituality and end up addicted to spiritual heroin.
Just as people who don't understand physics, which is most of us, C- in freshman physics in college, can be drawn away through what sounds like real science. People who don't know the Bible can be drawn into this false gospel and led astray. John,
it's heartbreaking. Like every time that I talk about it, I get sad thinking about it, because when I talk to people about the law of attraction and I get the pushback and they want to believe it because they want to believe it. It doesn't matter how many books I write, doesn't matter if I'm like, hey, you can have my book for free. Hey, I just recorded the audiobook, listen to the audiobook. That doesn't matter. They want to believe what they want to believe. And that hurts my heart. And then when I see people who are still caught up in prosperity gospel, still caught up in word of faith movement, and they have this false idea of who God is, I know I have this peace in my heart and in my soul that no matter what's going on in life, I know that God loves me. I know that no matter what situation I'm in, my question is never, God, do you love me? My question is always, all right, what do I have to learn in this season? There's never this questioning of God's love. But if you are caught up in this and you're seeing everyone else around you get blessed and you're not getting blessed, and now you're questioning if God loves you or if God even exists, that to me is so heartbreaking.
Sounds to me as though apologetics would be really a good thing for many of our churches to start teaching.
Yeah, I think apologetics is necessary. I think some apologetics is like, all right, you're trying too hard to prove a point. There is apologetics that go too far, but if you just get a basic understanding of apologetics, a basic foundation for why Christian faith is a reasonable thing to believe in. It's very reasonable and rational if you just look at the evidence. Definitely is. That's what brought me to it. I looked at the evidence and I'm like, I can't believe what people are saying about this empty tomb and resurrection. All of these other theories make absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
But you still have to account for it, and you're still trying to account for it. I think the most obvious is that Jesus actually rose from the dead, right? So that's a whole other story. But yet, apologetics is so important. This book, I look at it as like an apologetic for this worldview. I also think another great book is The Second Coming of the New Age by Josh Peck and Stephen Bancars.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great apologetics book. It's a little tough in some areas to wrap your head around, because the New Age gets pretty deep and wonky. But they do a great job, and it's such a great tool of being able to have these conversations and understand why Christianity, why not this other stuff, why Jesus, why nobody else.
My dad, the engineer, went through the same process, and he finally concluded that the most logical, most believable, most plausible explanation for the existence of the Christian church past the end of the first century, when you had the religious authorities in Jerusalem and the imperial authorities in Rome trying to stamp it out, was that too many people had seen the risen Christ to kill it. And so he said, just these other explanations, like he didn't really die on the cross, was revived in the tomb, ran off to the south of France with Mary Magdalene. All of that required a lot more faith than just accepting the story in the Gospels. What do you hope people take away from your book? Law of Attraction, a gateway drug to spiritual heroin. What do you hope that a reader will take as the ultimate message?
The ultimate message is I hope that reading the book gives you a saving faith in Christ. That's what my overall, the most important thing that I hope somebody gets from the book. Now, if you already are a believer, I just hope that you get an understanding of why these things are not cohesive with Christianity and your walk with Christ, why participating in this is bad for you and others. So I'm hoping that people walk away from it understanding that, and now have the ability to discern between when somebody is teaching actual Christianity or when somebody is teaching what I call faith fentanyl, which is counterfeit. It's spiritual heroin, but it's counterfeit. And then I also just wanted, I'm hoping that people can use it as an apologetic. So that way they can learn how they can have conversations about this stuff with people who believe in it. And if you can just chip away at the armor just a little bit, it's not our job to save somebody. That's up to God. That's not up to us. But it is our job to say something. It is our job to 1 Peter 3:15 have a defense for our faith, and be able to share that with people, right? So I'm hoping that people come away from the book being able to defend Christianity a little bit more and being able to defend themselves when they say, hey, the law of attraction is not real. It's not good for you. It doesn't make any sense. Science doesn't back it up. Philosophy, it's logically just fallacious. You can say these things, but if you don't have anything to back it up, people are just going to push you off to the side and keep believing whatever they want to believe. So I do think that it is very important, especially, and I know I'm going on a tangent right now, but especially because if you just go on TikTok and type in manifestation or law of attraction, scroll through what you're seeing, millions of views on these videos, millions of views of people telling you how to manifest something, telling you how to hack the universe, essentially telling you how to be a sorcerer, because that's what this is. When you break it all down and you go to its fundamental level, you trying to manipulate the universe is now you being a sorcerer, which is condemned in the Bible more times than I can count. So if you do not want to do something that is condemned by God, which would equal not being healthy for your Christian walk, then it's important to know about these things, and it's important to warn other people about them as well.
Amen. John Clash is the author of the book, The Law of Attraction, a gateway drug to spiritual heroin. John, where do people follow your work?
You could just go on YouTube and type John Clash, Jon Clash. If you type John Clash, Clash of Clans pops up. So just type that, and then you can find pretty much anything from there. If you're on Instagram, just J Clash. You could even Google me. I think I'm in the top. I'm on the first page of Google if you Google John Clash. So.
Well, it's a good thing, because if you're on page 2 or beyond, you might as well not even exist in our world today.
Right?
Yeah, John, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for writing the book. This is much needed in this day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Check the show notes below this program, whether you're watching or listening, and you'll find all of the links to where you can find John Clash online, as well as his book, Law of Attraction, a gateway drug to spiritual heroin, well worth adding to your research library. Coming up, by the way, if I look a little shiny now, it's because I went outside and pulled and dumped some weeds on the property between the intro and this. So anyway, coming up, you can join a modern-day Indiana Jones, Timothy Alberino, and us in the Holy Land next spring. Details on that, an update on our Build Barn Better project, and why we say Justin Trudeau, bless your pointy little head, straight ahead on A View from the Bunker. Everyone learns differently, and that's why we write fiction.
It is. I find that some people love to read nonfiction, but there's something about fiction that psychologists say breaks that fourth wall. You no longer doubt what you're reading. You get so engrossed in the story that you learn. You can learn propaganda, or you can learn God's truth.
Absolutely. So, yes, we write nonfiction books, but we are also using the gift of storytelling to try to teach spiritual warfare and spiritual truths. And during the months of August and September, we're offering all 10 of our novels at 20% off.
All 10 at 20% off? That's crazy.
That's right.
That is really, really a good deal. And now's the time if you want to buy gifts for birthdays or Christmas or whatever gift-giving season it is. It could even be Mother's Day next year. This is the time to save 20% on all of our fiction. And Derek's fiction is really, really good if you've never read it.
And Sharon's Red Wing Saga, 8 novels so far. She's hard at work on number 9. If you want to get engrossed in characters who are really grappling with the supernatural and trying to make sense of that world while teaching the divine counsel concepts that we try to communicate here, get involved in the Red Wing Saga. Again, all 8 of those novels, plus my 2 novels, The God Conspiracy and Iron Dragons, 20% off now only at our online store. That's gilberthouse.org/store.
Hi, it's Derek Gilbert with Gilbert House Ministries with a very quick update on our Build Barn Better project. As you can see just behind me, new ceiling fans just installed by Christ-powered construction. They came out, they managed to get them all installed in the course of just a few hours. And better yet, single remote controls all 3 fans, which is really nice. We've got a 1,200 square foot space here. Now it's insulated. Now we've got something to move the air around. Next week, Heller Heat and Air comes out to install the mini split so that we will have heating and air conditioning here through the winter. And then the final stage, as we put paneling up on the walls to give it the look inside of a barn. It's all coming together, and you have made it possible. Our Build Barn Better project, and we thank you.
Talking the Walk every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert, online at VFTB.net. That is our global hub for this program. Everything we do, Sharon and me, that is, we're at gilberthouse.org. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, youtube.com/gilberthouse or at gilberthouse on YouTube. Please, if you subscribe and share there, which we encourage you to do, then take a moment and download our free app. This gets you all of our content and, as we said, guarantees that we will not be canceled. You'll also find us on social media, Twitter, or rather X now, at View from Bunker or at Derek Gilbert, at PID Radio as well for our podcast that drops every Saturday morning. The podcast that started it all back in 2005. We're also on Facebook, View from the Bunkers, the page address there. Truth Social, Gab Me, We Get Her, at Derek P. Gilbert. And yes, also on Threads, mainly so that nobody else gets the the user handle there. Coming up, we'll tell you a little bit about our tour of Israel next year and how you can take advantage of the opportunity to see it with Timothy Alberino. But first, a travel advisory, as long as we're speaking of traveling, issued by the government of Canada for Canadians who are thinking about traveling to the United States. Maybe you heard about this. The government of Canada has issued a travel advisory, an official travel advisory for Canadians thinking about traveling to the United States because, quote, some states have enacted laws and policies that may affect 2S LGBTQI+ persons. Check relevant state and local laws. End quote. Now, if you're not familiar with that acronym, that is the preferred acronym in Canada. 2S, Two-Spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and then plus to cover all of the other gender identities that are proliferating faster than we can keep up out there. The interesting thing about this travel advisory from the government of Canada is that no specific law or policy or even state is named. You just have to sort of take it for granted that somewhere, something done by some state in the United States might affect you if you are a member of the 2S LGBTQI+ community. As though that is a monolithic block with all the same beliefs and agendas. Anyway, this really is nothing more than fatuous virtue signaling by the government of Canada. The Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland doubled down on this and said that, yes, we've got experts who make these recommendations on travel. Like, please, come on. In the entire Western world, there is no nation that is more tolerant of 2S LGBTQI+ individuals than these United States. Now, some states have passed laws that make it illegal to permanently sterilize and mutilate children. And if that's what they're referring to, then, well, so be it. I think we can live with it. The irony here is that given Canada's rather loose interpretation of medically assisted suicide laws, there's actually a greater danger to people who want to travel to Canada if they're physically challenged or slightly depressed. Because in Canada, that can be grounds for the government authorizing a practitioner of medicine to help you die. So, Justin Trudeau, we know you and your government, you're just trying to virtue signal, but from here in these United States, we love our Canadian neighbors and our friends to the north, but you, Mr. Trudeau, bless your pointy little head. Well, we've got a couple of things coming up to tell you about the Pitchfork and Hoe gathering. I'm really looking forward to this. This is a gathering of small farmers in North Dakota. Best practice workshops. There'll be live music as well. And I will be speaking on Friday and Saturday, October 27th and 28th of 2023. Be talking about giants in the Bible, why they are not only real, but relevant, and demons, devils, and dragons. As Halloween is approaching, shortly after that weekend, we'll talk about that. And since God calls these entities in the Bible by those names, maybe we should listen to him and consider that perhaps these entities, though we may not always perceive them with our natural eyes, actually exist. That is at the Eagles Club in Valley City, North Dakota. Again, October 27th and 28th, the Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering. You can find out more at the Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering page at Facebook, and we've got a link to that at our website, gilberthouse.org. Next spring, oh, by the way, I am reliably informed that Skywatch TV's fall virtual conference will kick off in November. So keep watching for that. We'll have details on that in the weeks ahead. Next spring, we'll be returning to the Holy Land, God willing. The date's March 31st through April 9th with an optional 3-day extension to Jordan. And our special guest is Timothy Alberino, author of the book Birthright, best-selling author, documentary filmmaker, adventurer, modern-day Indiana Jones. He will be going to Israel for the first time, so you get to experience these sites with him as he sees them. He and his lovely wife Jasmine, for the first time, will be taking him to some of the megalithic sites we've been to before, like Gilgal Rephaim, the Serpent Mound of Bashan, and more. And you can join us. Details at gilbertsinisrael.com, gilbertsinisrael.com. So thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to watch or listen, whether it's at YouTube or one of the many podcast sites out there like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, or wherever fine podcasts are sold. Our announcer is the inimitable D.C. Good. And Gilbert House, A View from the Bunker, is a production of Gilbert House Ministries and released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.